We actually, the equipment that's here is European-made equipment that we were able to find, and it just happened to be we were able to find it. The Mexican equipment that we use all our mills are very traditional southern Mexican stone mills. And those are the mills that we use to grind the nib into chocolate, to grind the sugar in the chocolate, that kind of thing before it gets molded into bars. Those are all Mexican stone mills. I'll be talking about those in a minute. For the meantime, this is our cocoa bean winnowing machine. It's good for nothing else. Unlike the roaster, we could roast coffee in the roaster. We actually do roast our almonds for the almond Mexican chocolate in the roaster. This machine does nothing but take the shell off of a cocoa bean, and it's big. The way it works is we dump our roasted beans in this hopper. The beans get carried up a bucket elevator and thrown into a bean breaker, where the beans are broken into pieces of nib and shell. Nib is kind of like the nut meat, and the shell, or the chaff, whatever you want to call it, is kind of the shell on the outside of the bean that doesn't really have any positive flavor characteristics and makes chocolate very difficult to refine unless you remove it. The FDA also requires us to remove it. So the bean gets broken up in this bean breaker. It falls, all those pieces of broken bean fall onto a big vibratory table that has a series of screens in them of various different screen sizes. So you get really fine screens in the beginning, going all the way up to really coarse, broad, open screens near the end. And the way it works is the machine separates the shell from the nib by density. So there's a big ventilator on top of the machine that's sucking air through these cascades on the front of the machine. And when the machine's running, the vibratory table is shaking all the pieces down through, and depending on the size, they fall down a different chute. And there's air getting sucked up through these chutes, and the nib, since it's heavier than the lightweight, thin shell, is allowed to fall through, and the shell is pulled out to the other side of the machine by the airflow. So the nib is what we take upstairs to grind in the chocolate, and the shell that comes out the back, we actually donate to a local community garden organization called Groundwork Somerville to use as ground cover or mulch. We also trade with an herb and vegetable farmer on the south coast. We trade her ground cover for vegetables. And we also sell it as tea to tea blenders who make traditional Argentinian cascarilla tea, which is this cocoa shell tea, which is popular. You can actually get it locally. MEMT has cascarilla teas. So yeah, that's what happens with this machine. Are there any questions about this guy? Yes.
Yeah. How efficient is it at separating the two? Do you ever get a little bit of one?
Yeah.
And the other?
It's impossible to have perfect efficiency of separation, but it's quite effective. It takes out like 96% of the shell.
Do you ever have any nib going in the shell section?
Yeah. Again, when the bean breaker breaks the beans, sometimes you'll get little particles of dust from the breaking process of this dusted nib, and that will get sucked out. So there is some loss of nib during this process, but it's pretty small because the way that the machine is designed, it breaks it very gently and lightly, so it doesn't really create much dust. And the machine is pretty good at separating that, but we do lose nib in the process.
And how old is the machine?
Again, we haven't found the age of this machine, but we're guessing the 1950s or 60s, a little younger than the roaster. We found this machine in the Dominican Republic. Chocolate factory going out of business. I was down there working with our cooperative down there, and I heard about this guy. Larry actually went and saw it the first time, my business partner. He went and saw the machine, did a little wheeling and dealing with the guy. I flew down like 2 months later, did the final deal, took it apart, took pictures, notes, packed it into a shipping container, and shipped it to myself. We installed it here a few months later after it landed, and we had to do a lot of work on it, but here it is today. Before we had this thing, we had this terrible homemade contraption that I had made up to make it so that we could get by before we had the money to buy this machine.
Did it come with duct tape?
The tape you see on it's actually this awesome silver tape, which is this really adhesive, strong, it's actually metal.
Aluminum tape.
It's like it's really cool stuff, and it's been very helpful. All aspects of our business.
Do you have to tune the air flow?
Yes, there's little knobs on the front tune.
Is that an art that you just learned?
That took a while. It didn't come with an instruction manual. So that's winnowing.